Chapter 1940 Duan Lingfeng's arrival. Master, what should we do next? Jian Yi looked. Let's send the disciples of the Luo royal family to Holy Kingdom of South Plume first. Then, let's head back to Holy Kingdom of South Plume and make a trip to Soul Snatching Palace, Jian Wushuang said. How about him? King of Venomous Worms pointed at the masked man in black robe that Jian Wushuang had soul-controlled. Keep him for now. Jian Wushuang's face was cold. Holocaust sect has always been very careful. We will keep him to stay in touch with Holocaust sect. Don't let Holocaust sect get suspicious and flee ahead of time. Let's continue our journey. Jian Wushuang's willpower moved and the ancient silver spaceship started traveling forward again. The remaining journey was rather smooth. Very soon, everyone arrived at the territory of Holy Kingdom of South Plume. Just as they arrived in the territory, a large crowd surrounding a middle-aged man in a purple robe came forward. It's the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume. Monarch came personally. Let's go. Hurry up and head out too. The disciples of the Luo royal family immediately walked out of the spaceship to greet. Very soon, they met each other and the exchange of conventional greetings was inevitable. Bother Luo's juniors, only a few of you left. The monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume looked at the dozen of disciples of the Luo royal family as he sighed emotionally. Then, the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume looked at Jian Wushuang and the other few on the spaceship from afar. Just as he saw Jian Wushuang, the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume gawked. Swoosh! The monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume moved and appeared in front of the spaceship. Excuse me. Are you Sword Emperor, Mr. Jian Wushuang? The monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume sounded fearful. You know me. Jian Wushuang glanced at the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume. The monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume immediately knelt before Jian Wushuang. Greetings, Sword Emperor. Mister, I just met a good friend of mine not too long ago. My good friend came from 10 cultivation sanctuaries and he had a copy of the mirror image where Sword Emperor performed the shocking stroke in the galaxy. I saw the scene where you killed the experts from Almighty's alliance. I recognized you from the mirror image and also Mr. Jian Yi next to you. Oh, I see. Jian Wushuang nodded coldly. However, the experts from Holy Kingdom of South Plume that came with the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume and the disciples of the Luo royal family were shocked. They had never expected that the monarch of a holy kingdom would kneel and kowtow before so many of them without caring about his identity. He kowtowed. As a chaotic real god, a monarch of a holy kingdom, he was on eminent position. One who could make him kowtow would be D*MN. Just what kind of an existence did we come across on the way here? The blue-haired lady, Luo Feng, was thrilled. As for the other disciples of the Luo royal family, they were astonished too. Previously, when they had seen Jian Wushuang killing people from Soul Snatching Palace with ease, they had already known that he was extraordinary. However, they had never expected that Jian Wushuang had the power to make a monarch of a holy kingdom kowtow. Get up! Jian Wushuang waved his sleeve and the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume couldn't help but stand up uncontrollably. Then, Jian Wushuang had looked at the Luo royal family members. I already escorted you here safely. Now, I am going to make a trip to Soul Snatching Palace. Would any of you like to follow me? To Soul Snatching Palace? The disciples of the Luo royal family were stunned. Forgive me for the intrusion. What are you heading to Soul Snatching Palace for? The purple-haired youth, Luo Tianhong asked. You'll know when we get there. Jian Wushuang didn't explain much. The disciples of the Luo royal family exchanged a look. Then, Luo Tianhong took a step forward. Mister, I will follow you. Millimeter, sure. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. Brother Tianhong? The other disciples looked worried. Don't worry. I am merely making a trip with this mister. I will return very soon. Luo Tianhong comforted the other disciples. The monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume exhorted softly, no matter what this mister tells you to do it without hesitation. Do you understand? Hearing what the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume had said, Luo Tianhong nodded heavily. Looking at the sight, Jian Wushuang smiled. He had no other intention when he brought Luo Tianhong. He merely wanted to recommend him to his best friend. Mister, When do we go? Luo Tianhong asked softly. We're not in a hurry. Just wait for a bit, Jian Wushuang replied coldly. A huge silver spaceship waited in the void. As for the troops from Holy Kingdom of South Plume, they waited in silence too. Jian Wushuang didn't leave and the monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume didn't dare to leave either. Very soon, a figure appeared at the far end. He's here. Jian Wushuang revealed a smile and he moved to greet him in the void. Haha, Duan Lingfeng, you're finally here? Jian Wushuang let out a hearty laugh. After I received your message, I took the space-time wormhole to rush over at the first instant. I already came here with my fastest speed possible. Don't complain that I'm slow. Duan Lingfeng in a white robe and carrying a saber looked cold, but there was gentleness in his eyes. Jian Wushuang and he had been through trials and tribulations together. When Jian Wushuang had been in danger, he had stood up for him. Back when he had been cornered by Four Symbol Mansion, Jian Wushuang had rushed there to resolve his dangerous situation too. They were sworn friends in life and death. Jian Wushuang didn't put on airs when he was talking to his friend. Duan Lingfeng was a cold man normally, but when he was talking to Jian Wushuang, he was much friendlier. Let's go to the spaceship and talk, Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng immediately returned to the silver spaceship. Then, the silver spaceship immediately plunged towards the direction of Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo. Farewell, Mr. The monarch of Holy Kingdom of South Plume watched as the silver spaceship departed. In the boundless dark void, the silver spaceship plunged at a high speed. In the cabin, Jian Wushuang, Duan Lingfeng and King of Venomous Worms sat together while Jian Yi and Qiu Yu stood by them in reverence. As for the purple-haired youth, Luo Tianhong, he stayed outside the cabin and continued to practice his saber skill. Luo Tianhong didn't know that the purpose of Jian Wushuang's trip was to wipe out Soul-Snatching Palace. He was filled with boundless hatred and he wanted to increase his power with all his might so that he could take revenge on behalf of the Luo royal family. The scene was naturally in the sight of Jian Wushuang and the others. The young man outside is the disciple that you want to recommend to me. Duan Lingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang as he held the wine glass. Yes, what do you think? Jian Wushuang smiled. He is very talented. His saber skill and comprehension of massacre doctrine is similar to mine. But, talent and power aren't enough to become my disciple. Even if he is suitable to become my disciple, I must be willing to take him as my disciple, Jian Wushuang said coldly. His thoughts were all about how to break through and become an almighty. He had never thought about taking disciples. He, don't be in a hurry. Let's watch and see, Jian Wushuang smiled. Chapter 1941 Barging into Soul-Snatching Palace. On the huge land that was floating. The floating land was where the imperial city of Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo was located. But then, Luo royal family was exterminated and the imperial city fell into the hands of Soul-Snatching Palace. The lair of Soul-Snatching Palace was set up there as well in order to take control of the entire Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo. Although I have no idea what the goal of Holocaust sect was, regardless, I'll just exterminate them straight away. Jian Wushuang overlooked the huge floating land as his eyes glowed with a chilly gleam. Duan Lingfeng, you go first, Jian Wushuang said. No problem. Duan Lingfeng didn't hesitate as he moved towards the huge floating land. Rumble. There was an extremely fierce real god aura that swept out. The real god aura was almost unbelievable among real gods. Who is it? Stop. Someone shouted and there were suddenly a few figures that burst out. Hearing the shouts, Duan Lingfeng didn't stop his footsteps. Courting death. Someone shouted again. There were a bunch of figures that burst out from Soul-Snatching Soul and let out fierce auras. There were as many as 6 real gods. In the void afar, Jian Wushuang and the few others stood there and watched quietly. Mister, will we just watch as Mr. Duan barge into Soul-Snatching Palace alone? The purple-haired youth, Luo Tianhong creased his eyebrows. He already knew what Jian Wushuang's plan was. He was there to exterminate Soul-Snatching Palace. However, Soul-Snatching Palace was a dangerous spot. Mr. Duan had barged in alone. Wouldn't it be extremely dangerous? Don't worry, just watch, Jian Wushuang looked calm. On the floating land, there was an explosion of war. Duan Lingfeng, who was in a white robe, held his saber in one hand and he looked as though he had transformed into a demon. With a billowing massacre aura, the boundless massacre doctrine formed a massacre realm that covered the entire universe. In terms of comprehension of massacre doctrine, Dean Lingfeng had obviously reached the standard of the 7th level of Doctrine Palace. It was already the standard of an almighty. His saber skill was even scarier. No matter how great the number of real God and universe God were there from Soul Snatching Palace, they were just clay chickens and pottery dogs, completely useless. He had massacred and left behind a sea of blood. There was no one who could withstand his saber lights that he performed with ease. With his power alone, he had barged into the lair of Soul Snatching Palace and massacred rampantly. This, Luo Tianhong was dumbfounded at the sight. He was shocked at the power displayed by Duan Lingfeng. He's so powerful. Mr. Duan is so powerful. They are real gods, but one casual slash of his saber could kill 3 of them. The higher-ups from Soul Snatching Palace teamed up and formed a formation to block, but he broke them apart with one slash. He is that powerful. It stirred a great commotion in Luo Tianhong's heart. He had always stayed in Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo. He had only wandered in a few other holy kingdoms nearby. Although he had some experience, he wasn't as knowledgeable and experienced. In his eyes, real gods were already high above, especially those who were eternal real gods and chaotic real gods. Especially chaotic real gods. In a normal situation, a chaotic real god could take over a holy kingdom and become a ruler easily. For instance, the strongest person in Luo royal family, monarch of Sky Luo, was only a chaotic real god. He was also the strongest person Luo Tianhong had ever seen. But then, Duan Lingfeng's rampant massacre and the power he displayed had exceeded Luo Tianhong's imagination. Those black-robed masked men appeared. Luo Tianhong's heart clenched. He saw that there were dozens of black-robed figures with savage masks who had appeared on the battlefield. Those black-robed masked men were all powerful. The weakest of them was a top eternal real god. Most of them were chaotic real gods. The dozens of them teamed up to hem Duan Lingfeng in. Mr. Duan is in danger. Luo Tianhong was worried. But in the end, vroom. A cold saber light swept and more than half of the dozens of black-robed masked man were wiped out by the merciless blade light. Then, Duan Lingfeng casually swung his saber at the remaining few. In the blink of an eye, the dozens of black-robed masked men were wiped out. This is too scary. Luo Tianhong stared. Jian Wushuang next to him wasn't surprised at such an outcome. Luo Tianhong, what do you think of my best friend's power? Jian Wushuang suddenly asked. Mr. Duan is the strongest person I have ever seen in saber skill and comprehension of massacre doctrine, Luo Tianhong said in a serious tone. Of course, he is widely acknowledged as the #1 real god in eternal chaotic world. Jian Wushuang smiled and said. #1 real god in eternal world. Luo Tianhong stunned. Although he had never been to 10 cultivation sanctuaries, he knew just how impressive it was to be a #1 real god in eternal world. Of course, they had said that Duan Lingfeng was the #1 real god in eternal world without taking Jian Wushuang into consideration. Because in eternal chaotic world, there was no one who treated Jian Wushuang as a real god anymore. Luo Tianhong, you are also good at saber skills and you are also comprehending massacre doctrine. Don't you want to be his disciple? Jian Wushuang casually asked. Be formally apprenticed to Mr. Duan? Luo Tianhong was stunned and his eyes immediately shimmered. I, of course, want to be formally apprenticed to him. I wonder if Mr. Duan is willing to take me as his disciple. You can give it a try, Jian Wushuang smiled. Jian Wushuang looked as though he was casually speaking, but Luo Tianhong took his advice seriously. He looked at Duan Lingfeng, who was massacring rampantly, and he made up his mind. Just then, Hong, there was a fierce divine might that suddenly soared. The divine might was high and above and it instantly engulfed the universe. On the floating land, the cultivators were shivering in fear under such divine might. Some even knelt down straight away. This is... Luo Tianhong looked terrified. There was a malicious smile that spread across Jian Wushuang's face. The cold-looking elder in a black robe was the one who gave out the divine might. When Jian Wushuang saw the cold-looking elder, his gaze was fixed. He, someone familiar, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He wondered if it was a coincidence. He had met the cold-looking elder once. It was many years ago. Back when Jian Wushuang was just a stage 2 ultimate real god, it was too difficult for him to accumulate ultimate divine power in his body. Hence, he went to Divine Pond of Absolute Beginning that was controlled by Sir God Luo Shoz under the lead of Sir God Mad Dog. When Jian Wushuang was taking in the power of Absolute Beginning in Divine Pond of Absolute Beginning, the experts from Holocaust sect happened to barge in. Then, there were 4 Sir Gods who came. The cold-looking elder was one of them. In the end, Jian Wushuang, Sir God Mad Dog and Sir God Luo Sho had teamed up to fight off the other 4 Sir Gods. They had even killed His Highness Mu Hong. Now, he had crossed paths with the cold-looking elder again. Chapter 1942 The 7th Palace Master, Hong. On the battlefield, Duan Lingfeng was already fighting with the cold-looking elder. Although the cold-looking elder was a Sir God, Duan Lingfeng was number 1 on Real God ranking list. He was powerful enough to fight with him. He would definitely not be defeated in a short period of time. Mister, you said that Mr. Duan is the number 1 real God in Eternal World. The person that is fighting with him now seems to be slightly stronger than him. Could he be the legendary Almighty? Luo Tianhong couldn't help but ask. Yes, an Almighty, Jian Wushuang answered. He really is, Luo Tianhong gasped. To cultivators who stayed in their holy kingdoms all year round, an Almighty was definitely like a figure from the legend. Mr. Duan, who is only a real god, can fight with a legendary Almighty like that. He lives up to his reputation as the number 1 real god in Eternal World, Luo Tianhong complimented. Jian Wushuang, let's fight. Otherwise, your best friend might not be able to endure for long, King of Venomous Worms said. Millimeter, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. King of Venomous Worms immediately moved and returned to Jian Wushuang's body. Qiu Yu, stay on the spaceship with this young man, Jian Wushuang exhorted. Yes, Qiu Yu nodded. Then, Jian Wushuang and Jian Yi flew to the huge floating land. Just as they landed on the land, rumble. A terrifying divine might flowed out of Jian Wushuang's body. The power of the divine might was stronger by tens of folds than the full divine might shown by the cold-looking elder. The divine might was like a prison as it engulfed the entire land. The cultivators on the land, including the men from Soul Snatching Palace, were terrified. With such terrifying divine might, it finally startled the expert who was hidden in the deepest place of the land. Then, there were fierce auras that burst out from the depth of the land, also known as the old lair of Soul Snatching Palace. A few figures appeared one after another. They gathered with the cold-looking elder. There was a total of 7 figures floating in the air. Just like 7 gods. So many of them. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He knew that there were experts from Holocaust sect within Soul Snatching Palace, and there might even be Almighties. However, he had never expected that in Soul Snatching Palace itself, they hid a total of 7 Almighties. Most importantly, among the 7 Almighties, there were not only Sir Gods. There were only 4 Sir Gods and the other 3 were Emperor Gods. 3 Emperor Gods and 4 Sir Gods, that was the powerful team formation in front of Jian Wushuang. Among the 3 Emperor Gods, the one leading was a golden-robed man with a crimson monstrous mask. The golden-robed masked man stood there and pressed down on Jian Wushuang with pressure. Without a doubt, the golden-robed masked man was a true peak Emperor God. Interesting. Such a minor force like Soul Snatching Palace is impressive enough to contain 7 gods. There's even a peak Emperor Gods, Jian Wushuang smiled. His smile was cold like a blade. The 7 Almighties stared at Jian Wushuang. The pair of eerie golden eyes that were revealed by the golden-robed masked men were looking at Jian Wushuang as he let out boundless resentment. You are Jian Wushuang. The golden-robed man sounded cold and the air froze in an instant. You know me. It seems that I am quite famous in Holocaust sect. Jian Wushuang rubbed his nose. I am the 7th Palace Master of Holocaust sect. The golden-robed masked man stared at Jian Wushuang as murderous intention swept out. Jian Wushuang, I finally found you. Give me my son back. Jian Wushuang was stunned. Your son? Could it be His Highness Mu Hong? Although Jian Wushuang had crossed paths with Holocaust sect multiple times, the only expert from Holocaust sect that died had at his hand was His Highness Mu Hong. Plus, Jian Wushuang had always thought that His Highness Mu Hong had a background. From what it seemed, he should be his father, the golden-robed masked man before him. With a peak emperor god as his father, no wonder His Highness Mu Hong would be so arrogant, Jian Wushuang sneered. Save your nonsense. I will take revenge on my son's behalf today. Die. The golden-robed masked man bellowed, and his peak emperor god aura instantly locked onto Jian Wushuang as his target. His body immediately increased tremendously in size to 10 zhong tall. His golden robe turned into boundless golden clouds. Rumble. A huge golden mountain appeared in the sky above. The golden mountain continuously magnified and pressed down on everything in the universe. That very moment, it pressed down on Jian Wushuang. Looking at the golden mountain above him, Jian Wushuang's eyes dilated in shock. As the golden mountain pressed on him, he could clearly feel a suppressing power. If not mistaken, the golden mountain should be a suppressing treasure that was rare. Plus, the power had reached the level of chaotic divine treasure. Chaotic divine treasure is rare to begin with. A suppressing chaotic divine treasure is even harder to come by, Jian Wushuang muttered. Even he felt danger approaching when he was under the golden mountain. My 7 stars are all broken. My power of ancient tribe bloodline has just recovered by a slight bit, and my power isn't at its peak. I am at a disadvantage when I am fighting with the 7th Palace Master who has suppressing chaotic divine treasure. Jian Wushuang thought and immediately looked at Jian Yi next to him. Take care of this person. Kill him. Jian Wushuang commanded. Yes, Jian Yi nodded politely, and there was immediately a crimson cloud churning on his body. There was crimson fog that gathered in the sky and instantly formed a crimson ocean to engulf the entire huge golden mountain. The golden mountain displayed its power that was fierce. However, when it hit the crimson ocean, it as though it had hit a ball of cotton. What? The golden masked man, also the 7th Palace Master, couldn't help but steal a glance at Jian Yi. However, Jian Yi didn't stop, and his figure grew illusionary and charged towards the 7th Palace Master. Humph. The 7th Palace Master humphed coldly. When Jian Yi got closer, he took out a huge seal with a flip of his wrist. On the huge seal, there was a golden dragon that carried a powerful aura. It was an extremely unique chaotic divine treasure. As the 7th Palace Master patted the seal let out an intense golden glow. The golden dragon on the seal instantly became alive. Roar. A terrifying dragon roar reverberated in the universe. The golden dragon suddenly became tens of thousands of zhong in length. It contained boundless imposing power as it charged at Jian Yi. The golden dragon gave Jian Wushuang a feeling that it could match evenly with an ordinary peak emperor god. This 7th Palace Master has so many treasures on hand. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Chapter 1943. Unaware of the aureole behind. From the golden mountain to the golden dragon seal, the 7th Palace Master took out 2 golden spears. The 2 golden spears carried extraordinary aura as well. They were also chaotic divine treasure. He really had a lot of treasure with him. Treasures are great, but in terms of his power, he is only an emperor god after all. He would at most be similar to Palace Wu Luo from Abysmal Palace. Even with the assistance of the treasure, he definitely wasn't Jian Yi's match. Jian Wushuang sneered when he looked at the other 6 almighties nearby. Jian Yi could take care of the 7th Palace Master, but these other 6, die. There was a flash of murderous intention in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Then, 4 Hongjung golden swords soared up at the same time. They instantly became 4 resplendent golden lights. The 4 golden lights were unbelievably fast as they flew at the 6 almighties. Die. Kill him. The 6 almighties were soaring with murderous intention. There was no fear in them. They immediately let their power into full play and fought with Jian Wushuang. Although the 6 of them had teamed up, Their powers were vastly different from Jian Wushuang's. Jian Wushuang only drove the 4 Hongjun golden swords to attack rampantly, and he killed 4 Sir gods at lightning speed. As for the remaining 2 emperor gods who had ordinary fighting powers, they didn't last long either before they were killed by Jian Wushuang. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang's body floated in the void, and the 4 Hongjun golden sword returned to his sides as he looked down at the 6 dead bodies on the ground. However, he was shocked. One should know that the 6 Almighties were obviously not his match. They would totally be suppressed if they fought with him. However, the 6 Almighties had no intention to retreat even though they knew so. There was only madness that wanted to kill him. Almighties, every single one of that went through so much. They should look highly upon their lives. However, the 6 of them seem to have put their lives aside. What is going on? Jian Wushuang muttered. Not only the 6 Almighties, but Jian Wushuang also noticed that the 7th Palace Master who was fighting with Jian Yi was the same. He had played all his trump cards and he was still suppressed by Jian Yi. Theoretically, at such a crucial moment, he should run for his life. But in actual fact, he had no intention to flee. Just then. Humph! The 7th Palace Master suddenly humphed coldly, and the aura on his body suddenly increased at a terrifying speed. This is soul ignition. Jian Wushuang's face suddenly changed. He wasn't unfamiliar with soul ignition. Back when he had invited Colored Glaze Emperor God and Emperor God Ju Yin to Deluge Fortress, when they had besieged Fortress Master Hong Tian, he had been cornered into a desperate situation and he performed soul ignition and swore to counterattack. But in the end, Jian Wushuang and his troops had killed him. Once one soul was ignited, his overall power would increase tremendously in a short period of time. However, the price to pay was definite death. Only an expert who was above peak Emperor God could pull off that move. If one wasn't at a final desperate situation, no one would do so. Then, although the 7th Palace Master was cornered by Jian Yi, he would stand no chance to flee with all the treasures and trump cards that he had. But he soul ignited to counterattack without hesitation. "Hes mad!" Jian Wushuang exclaimed. "Jian Wushuang, I want you dead." The mask on the 7th Palace Master shattered and revealed an old, ugly face. The face was then distorted and ferocious looking. Because of soul ignition, the power that he let out had reached a brand new level. In collaboration with the treasures he had, his fighting power was extraordinary. "Jian Yi, block him!" Jian Wushuang roared. Jian Yi naturally wouldn't hesitate to go forward and fight a fierce battle. Plus, he put his full power on display. Bang! 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 There was continuous explosions that resounded in the universe. The sky was filled with divine power and the floating land quivered madly. Luckily, there were countless cultivators on the land that fled far away. Otherwise, the battle could destroy everything on land. Hong! There was another explosion and the floating land shattered into pieces entirely. "Jian Wushuang! Jian Wushuang!" An angry roar reverberated in the universe. The hysterical roar brought about boundless madness and unwillingness. This man. Jian Wushuang fixed his gaze at the 7th Palace Master solemnly as his face grew distressed. He felt glad that he had brought Jian Yi with him. The 7th Palace Master couldn't break through Jian Yi's guard and come before him even if he soul ignited. But, if he was alone, his power of 7-star had yet to recover. There were many trump cards that he had yet to perform. If he were to fight against the 7th Palace Master at such a crucial moment, he might really be in danger. Time flew past. After a while, the 7th Palace Master's consciousness started fleeing along with his ignited soul. They started to disperse. After a while, the 7th Palace Master's aura finally vanished into thin air and he died. Is he dead? Jian Wushuang let out a breath of relief. Oh yeah, his treasure. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed. The 7th Palace Master had many treasures, he immediately wanted to go forward. Suddenly, just as he approached the 7th Palace Master's dead body, the surrounding dark void suddenly shattered. Then, a ghostly figure leaped out from the broken void. Then, she waved and took the 7th Palace Master's dead body along with his Chen Kuan ring and his treasures. Courting death. Jian Wushuang grew distressed and the 4 Hongjun golden sword burst out. Jian Yi, who was near to the 7th Palace Master's dead body, plunged forward as well. The ghostly figure smirked coldly and dodged. Her body moved to somewhere far away. The 4 Hongjun golden swords and Jian Yi's attack missed. Sword Emperor, don't be angry, there was a soft voice. The person steadied herself and it was an old lady in black robe. Although she was only a Sir God, she gave Jian Wushuang a strange feeling. Forget about the others. The old lady in the black robe had been hiding in the surrounding dark void for so long, but both Jian Wushuang and Jian Yi didn't notice her at all. She shouldn't be belittled by that factor alone. Who are you? Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold as he looked at the old lady in the black robe. It doesn't matter who I am. Sword Emperor, you only need to know that I come at my master's command. My master's surname is Lung. Sword Emperor should know her. The old lady in black robe smiled as she spoke. Jian Wushuang's body stiffened at her speech. Surname Lung? Lord Lung? Jian Wushuang's gaze was turned cold. Lord Lung? No, my master is no longer the Lord but Holocaust Sect Master. Chapter 1944 Holocaust Sect Master? Sect Master? Jian Wushuang's face grew in distress. He heard from Emperor Bai earlier that Holocaust Sect had gone through a drastic change. Someone united them using thunderous measures. However, he had never expected the one who united Holocaust Sect would be Lung Rushua. Speaking of which, Holocaust Sect has to thank Sword Emperor for helping Holocaust Sect to take care of these betrayers. Otherwise, Holocaust Sect has to use time and effort to deal with them. The old lady in black robe smiled. Jian Wushuang glanced at the few Almighty's dead bodies around him and he understood then. No wonder the experts from Holocaust Sect had decided to maintain high profile. They didn't even flee when they saw him coming but opted to fight a life-and-death battle. From what it seemed, these people already betrayed Holocaust Sect and they were eyed by Lung Rushua. If he wasn't not mistaken, there should have been marks on their bodies long ago. They had never fled. In other words, they were actually dead for sure. They were only waiting for Holocaust Sect to kill them. It was just that Holocaust Sect had yet to take action, but they had met Jian Wushuang. Sword Emperor, for what happened today, I thank you on behalf of my master. Farewell. The old lady in black robe smiled maliciously as her figure suddenly became blurry. Want to leave? Jian Wushuang's gaze turned cold and there was a purple bead in his hand. Under Jian Wushuang's manipulation of his will, vroom, boundless purple light covered the light. In an instant, it formed a formation that covered a range of few millions miles. One realm pearl became formation at one's will. You can't run away. Jian Wushuang's voice resounded in the air. He, I knew Sword Emperor has a treasure that turned into formation at your will. As I dare to take away the treasures in front of you, I naturally am well prepared. The old lady in the black robe smiled faintly. She flipped her hand and took out a token. The token broke and instantly shattered the void. There was a space tunnel that appeared from nowhere. What? Jian Wushuang was surprised. The formation that one realm pearl formed covered the entire space-time. But the token that he had taken out could ignore the space-time and form a space tunnel that connected to the outside world in such situation. Humph. Jian Wushuang let out a cold humph and the divine power in his body flowed. At the same time, there was also minor power of ancient tribe bloodline that King of Venomous Worms barely recovered. Although his power of ancient tribe bloodline had only recovered by a slight bit, it was barely enough. Moon-picking skill. There was soaring divine power. Rumble. The space-time that the old lady in the black robe was in immediately faced unprecedented pressure. The space-time tunnel that appeared in the air started to distort from the pressure. T. The old lady in the black robe's face grew grave. Just then, from the space-time tunnel that was distorted, Kwong, there was a lily-white hand that extended. The lily-white hand was clean without any flaw. At the same time, there was a cold aura that spread out from the other side of space-time tunnel that Jian Wushuang could never forget in his lifetime. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed when he sensed the aura. Lung Rushua. Jian Wushuang glared at the space-time tunnel. The lily-white hand that extended from the space-time tunnel only moved casually, and the space-time that had been pressured earlier instantly settled down, and the space-time tunnel resumed normal. The old lady in the black robe seized the chance to enter the space-time tunnel and disappeared. The space-time tunnel then started to close gradually. Right before the space-time tunnel disappeared, there was suddenly a voice. "Hey, Jen Wushuang, I never expected you to have the chance to reach where you are now. It's a pity that you are still far from saving her. Very far. Ha." There was a taint of disdain in her voice, and it reverberated in Jen Wushuang's ears. Jen Wushuang clenched his hands and watched the space-time tunnel disappear. His body quivered faintly. He felt extremely solemn from the bottom of his heart. Very far, what she said repeatedly rang in his head. With my power now, is it still not enough? Jen Wushuang clenched his teeth. Ever since he had left Green Fire World until then, it had been tens of thousands of years. He had been trying his best to increase his power and find ways to make himself stronger. No matter what kind of danger he faced, he would fight for a string of hope with his all. He did all that so that he could find Lung Rushua one day and save her wife Lung Rushuang. After so many years, he had, though his improvement speed was shocking enough. Especially then, when he already stood on the peak of eternal chaotic world, even the great emperors held scruples with him. However, he realized then that he was still not powerful enough. He was far from enough. Holocaust Sect is a hidden dark force that could match evenly with Sanctuary Alliance. Its overall power might not win over Sanctuary Alliance, but they shouldn't be too far apart. But she could unite Holocaust Sect and become Holocaust Sect Master with thunderous measure. Such power. Jen Wushuang's face grew solemn. Besides, the lily-white hand that extended from the space-time tunnel earlier must have been Lang Rukshu's. However, from the lily-white hand alone, although Jen Wushuang couldn't determine her true power, he was determined that Lung Rushua must have reached the stage on par with Great Emperor. How could she improve so quickly? Jen Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Although a primordial great sinner has advantage in cultivation, she shouldn't have reached the level of Great Emperor in only tens of thousands of years. From what I see, she definitely received an impressive opportunity. King of Venomous Worm's voice rang in Jen Wushuang's head. Jen Wushuang nodded in silence. He obviously thought it was the only explanation as well. Jen Wushuang, don't be in a hurry. She received a great opportunity and became a great emperor in a short time. You are not too shabby yourself. Plus, you already received the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. You only need some time until you leap to the 7th step. By then, you should be able to fight with her. You are definitely not far from possessing power enough to suppress her, King of Venomous Worms reassured. Millimeter, Jen Wushuang nodded heavily, and he was confident too. Swoosh, swoosh. There were two figures that appeared next to Jen Wushuang. Master. Jen Yi looked at Jen Wushuang. Jen Wushuang, are you okay? Duan Lingfeng asked. I'm okay. Jen Wushuang shook his head. The Almighties from Holocaust Sect are wiped out. The remaining are just some real gods and some people from Soul Snatching Palace. Kill them all. Jen Wushuang was boiling with murderous intention. He waved and 4 bronze-armored Dao soldiers appeared simultaneously. In addition to Duan Lingfeng, Jen Yi, and himself, they massacred the experts from Soul Snatching Palace mercilessly. Chapter 1945, Taking in a Disciple. Without Almighties, the remaining experts from Holocaust Sect and Soul Snatching Palace naturally had no space to struggle when they were fighting against Jen Wushuang and his troop. In a short while, the entire Soul Snatching Palace was exterminated. Only some extremely weak disciples managed to escape. In the vast void. Your name is Luo Tianhong, right? Duan Lingfeng's gaze was cold as he stared at the purple-haired young man in front of him. Yes, Luo Tianhong nodded solemnly as his eyes filled with enthusiasm. I arranged an opponent for you. If you can defeat him, I will take you in as a registered disciple. However, if you can't kill your opponent, you can only blame yourself. I will not help you, Duan Lingfeng said coldly. Registered disciple? Luo Tianhong licked his lips. He had already seen Duan Lingdeng's power. Although he wasn't as scary as Jen Wushuang, he was still a superb existence that made him passionate. To be able to be formally apprenticed to a superb existence, even though he was just a registered disciple, it was worthy for Luo Tianhong to fight for it. He is my opponent. Luo Tianhong looked at the brawny man in front of him. The brawny man's face was like a grave, covered in hopelessness. However, the aura he carried reached the level of a peak void real god. A universe god had to fight with a top void real god and had to kill him. That was quite challenging. However, for a true top genius, it was doable. Forget about the others, at least Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng could do that when they were universe gods. Listen up, Duan Lingfeng looked at the brawny man, I'll give you a string of hope. Fight with your all. As long as you can kill your opponent, you can live. If not, die. The brawny man from Soul Snatching Palace originally felt hopeless. However, when he heard what Duan Lingfeng had said, his eyes glowed. He stared at Luo Tianhong and an unprecedented murderous intention and hope of life soared. The power that a person had during his final crucial moment was the scariest. Let's begin, Duan Lingfeng said coldly. The two of them immediately fought in the void. One of them wanted to be formally apprenticed to Duan Lingfeng. The other merely wanted to survive. Both exploded their strongest fighting power. At the border of the battlefield, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng stood side by side. To have this young man fight with a top void real god and the match will be called with life and death. Only you could think of such an idea, Jian Wushuang said. He wants to be my disciple. How could it be so simple? Plus, the opponent that I assigned to him is evenly matched after all. It couldn't be considered as unfair, Duan Lingfeng said coldly. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows but didn't say much. After all, it was Duan Lingfeng picking his disciple, not him. In the void, the battle between a universe god and a real god lasted for very long. Both parties have firm beliefs and were extremely mad in the fight. In the end, it became a competition of willpower and endurance. Finally, the outcome of the match was out. The one who survived until the end was Luo Tianhong. He stood in the void as his figure quivered. He was covered in blood and his face was pale but his eyes were shimmering with joy. In front of him was the dead body of the brawny man. I won. Luo Tianhong was excited. The blood in his body was boiling too. The battle could be considered as a transformation to this young man. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly as he watched. Not too shabby, Duan Lingfeng nodded faintly. Luo Tianhong defeated his opponent. According to what Duan Lingfeng had said earlier, he had taken him in as his registered disciple. Then, Luo Tianhong left with Duan Lingfeng. As for Jian Wushuang and his troop, they left Holy Kingdom of Sky Luo as well. On their way out, Jian Wushuang sent a message to Purple Moon Emperor and informed him about the ins and outs. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to hide anything but he kept the relationship between himself and the Holocaust sect master, Leng Rushue, a secret. It seems that the news that Sanctuary Alliance got isn't false, Purple Moon Emperor exclaimed, not long ago. Although Holocaust sect master united Holocaust sect using thunderous measures, there are still many within Holocaust sect that aren't willing to follow their sect master's command. They are considered betrayers. Holocaust sect has been wiping out these traitors all this while. As for the 7th Palace Master, Sanctuary Alliance knew about him. Previously, Holocaust sect held great power and an eminent position. It's a pity that he wasn't on the same side with Holocaust sect master. Hence, after Holocaust sect master attacked, he brought a bunch of experts and fled. At the same time, he seemed to have brought along some treasures that Holocaust sect collected. It's a pity that these treasures didn't fall into your hands but were taken away by Holocaust sect master. Jian Wushuang clearly understood when he heard that. Jian Wushuang, Eternal Chaotic World isn't peaceful. Holocaust sect and Akron Palace are preparing to launch an attack. I reckon it wouldn't be long until they make a big movement again. Before that, you have to focus on cultivation and seize the time to break through and become an almighty. You are an inverse cultivator. As soon as you become an almighty, you will be compared to a great emperor favorably. By then, you can be one of the highest fighting powers of Sanctuary Alliance. This is the most important task for you now, Purple Moon Emperor said. Millimeter, I understand, Jian Wushuang nodded. He also knew what was most important to him then. To step foot on the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, breakthrough, and become an almighty should be the most important task on hand. Return to Green Fire World. The spiritual power is the most intense there. I will get the best result if I cultivate there, Jian Wushuang decided. An ancient silver spaceship immediately flew in the direction of Green Fire World. They passed through some space-time wormholes along the way. Jian Wushuang then arrived at Green Fire World in no time. Jian Wushuang had only left Green Fire World for a few thousand years. But in the few thousand years, there had been a drastic change in Green Fire World. Firstly, the spiritual influence of heaven and earth. A few thousand years ago, before Jian Wushuang left, the spiritual influence of heaven and earth in Green Fire World already far beyond 10 cultivation sanctuaries. Then, after a few thousand years of evolution, the spiritual influence of heaven and earth in Green Fire World and the overall cultivation environment was at least tens of times stronger than 10 cultivation sanctuary. It was merely a conservative estimation that Jian Wushuang did. Jian Wushuang even thought the cultivation environment in Green Fire World could compare favorably with the first era. Even though there was a distance, it wasn't big. In such an outstanding cultivation environment, Green Fire World's cultivators naturally improved rather quickly under Jian Wushuang's guidance. Then, the number of universe gods in Green Fire World had more than tens of thousands of people. There was even more than 10 real gods. Chapter 1946 12,000 years. It has only been a few thousand years. Jian Wushuang exclaimed in surprise. In the small Green Fire World, the number of cultivators was far less than in other worlds. However, the experts in Green Fire World were about the same compared to an ordinary Holy Kingdom. Plus, Green Fire World continued to evolve and it was improving at a shocking speed. Especially when Jian Wushuang came, he had brought complete guidance from real God to almighty level. In all aspects and a variety of them. He had brought back enormous resources. Jian Wushuang prepared all of that for Green Fire World when he was in Lineage of Star. If the guidance in Green Fire World was only to reach real God level, at most it could give birth to real God. Then, Green Fire World possessed the ability to give birth to an almighty. Not only Sir Gods, but also Emperor Gods. Green Fire World could give birth to them but they needed time. Besides, after Jian Wushuang returned from Lineage of Star, he improved Wushuang City at the first instant. Then, he left behind richer resources and opportunities in Wushuang City. After that, Wushuang City became a true land of opportunity. As long as one was powerful and lucky enough, they would receive great opportunity in Wushuang City. I have prepared whatever I have to prepare. I tried my best to perfect the cultivation environment in Green Fire World. Now, it depends on how hardworking the juniors in Green Fire World are. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He foresaw that in another few thousand years or tens of thousands of years, Green Fire World would be well developed and there would be countless experts sparring. Previously, Jian Wushuang had thought that Green Fire World would only possess the potential of becoming a new sanctuary in eternal chaotic world. However, from what it seemed, it wasn't just that. After that, Jian Wushuang started cultivating in seclusion in Wushuang City as well. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged. King of venomous worms, for the rest of this time, I have Veto depend on you, Jian Wushuang smiled. I'll take care of it, King of venomous worms nodded. The environment in Green Fire World is outstanding. It will be easier to recover your power of ancient tribe bloodline. With my ability, I should be able to fully recover your power of ancient tribe bloodline in 5,000 years. 5,000 years. Jian Wushuang was very contented with that. One should know that when his 6 stars broke, King of venomous worms had taken almost 7,000 years to fix it. Then, he only needed 5,000 years, which was much shorter comparatively. The power of ancient tribe bloodline would be passed to King of venomous worms while Jian Wushuang fully concentrated on studying the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill. The 7th step of inverse cultivation skill was also the level of an almighty. In ancient times, it was called chaotic realm. As an inverse cultivator, The current stage was known as chaotic supreme. The realm was similar but the disposition was different. Every single step an inverse cultivator took was different from the others. Every single step taken was entirely different from an ordinary cultivator's. For instance, at real god level, just how scary was an inverse cultivator as ultimate real god? Jian Wushuang had been gifted with divine power and a divine body that were comparable favorably with an emperor god at his third stage ultimate real god level. Hence, he could perform such terrifying fighting power at real god level. The seventh step of an inverse cultivator, chaotic supreme, was different from chaotic realm of an ordinary cultivator. There was naturally a huge difference. As for where the difference was, Jian Wushuang had never reached that level. So, he didn't know. I have reached the extreme limit of ultimate real God, my substantive soul has formed and my comprehension of doctrine has reached the requirements. In other words, I have fulfilled all prerequisites to break through from real God to Almighty. Next, the only thing left is an opportunity. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and started cultivating. He didn't know how long he needed to break through, but he couldn't be in a hurry. He had to wait patiently. For the rest of the time, Jian Wushuang had been cultivating. Time was merciless and it flew past. In the blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang had cultivated for 12,000 years in Wushuang City. 12,000 years wasn't long to many almighties in eternal chaotic world. On the contrary, it was a fairly short time. There were many immortals who cultivated in seclusion for at least 100,000 years or even hundreds of thousands of years. However, to Jian Wushuang, 12,000 years was the longest period he had cultivated for. Although it had been man years, he didn't intend to exit seclusion. During the 12,000 years, regardless of if it was Lineage of Star or Green Fire World, it was very peaceful. Lineage of Star had gained a steady footing as the number one force in Sanctuary Alliance. With Jian Wushuang serving as a deterrent force, all forces in Sanctuary Alliance didn't seem to have anyone who dared to challenge Lineage of Star. With such a position, Lineage of Star developed extremely quickly. Their overall power had been stronger and their foundation became firmer too. As for Green Fire World, just like Jian Wushuang had expected, the speed of growth was terrifying. In merely 12,000 years, Green Fire World's overall power already reached a brand new level. There were more than 100 real gods and there were countless universe gods. It was a pity that there had yet to be any almighties. Jian Wushuang also knew that with the assistance of an outstanding environment and abundant resources, it wouldn't be difficult for Green Fire World to give birth to universe god and real god, or even chaotic real god could be nurtured much easier. However, for Almighty was different from real god after all. Green Fire World had the ability to nurture an Almighty. However, to give birth to an Almighty in a short period of time, it was still quite impossible. He reckoned that it would at least require continuous nurturing for 20,000 years until Green Fire World give birth to an Almighty. In 100,000 years, Green Fire World should be barely comparable with a sanctuary in eternal chaotic world. However, it would be unrealistic if Green Fire World wanted to continue to nurture in peace for another 100,000 years. On the huge ancient battlefield, there was a huge head lying there in silence. The huge head was boundless. Green Fire World was located at the core of the head, it was merely a small dot on the head. At that very moment, there was a malicious-looking young man who appeared on the head. The malicious-looking young man was Emperor God Xiexin. Emperor God Xiexin had arrived at the battlefield over 12,000 years ago through the hidden space gap. Then, he had been wandering in the battlefield. Until then, it was already over 12,000 years. During the 12,000 years, he clearly knew how great the value of the ancient battlefield he was at was. Forget about the rest, in just 12,000 years, he obtained various kinds of opportunities. With the opportunities, his power had increased tremendously. Chapter 1947 Cultivator. So magical. The ancient battlefield is too magical, Emperor God Xiexin muttered. After he had wandered in the ancient battlefield for over 12,000 years, he knew the place better. There was no doubt that the ancient battlefield was more precious than the ancient mystery land. Not only because it was an ancient battlefield, it was much broader and vast than ancient Mystery Land. There were more opportunities as well. Most importantly, there was no one else wandering in the ancient battlefield. For instance, the ancient Mystery Land had opened countless times in the Second Era, let alone the First Era. Countless times of opening, and large numbers of experts would search for opportunities each time. Hence, many opportunities had been unearthed. Those that had yet to be revealed should be hard to obtain by others as well. However, the ancient battlefield was entirely different. Boundless opportunities contained were completely on display, and there were too many opportunities around. It's a pity that I am weaker in power and my defense power isn't strong enough. There are many places with great opportunities, but I dare not wander. Otherwise, I could achieve even more. Emperor God Xie clenched his hands. He was very careful, very cautious. Once he noticed that something was not right, he would immediately leave. He'd rather not get the opportunity than taking a bigger risk. Because he was cautious, he had survived for over 12,000 years. Otherwise, the ancient battlefield that contained huge dangers would have killed him many times. Emperor God Xie thought. Just then, Emperor God Xie was surprised. He suddenly noticed the few auras within his soul power's sensory range. These are cultivators. Emperor God Xie was shocked. He thought that there was no one who knew the ancient battlefield and there was only him alone who had the advantage. But then, he noticed other cultivators on the ancient battlefield. Although the few cultivators were not powerful. Let's take a look first. Emperor God Xie squinted his eyes as he moved in the direction of the few cultivators. In the void, there were 4 figures flying forward slowly. There was a mixture of men and women. They looked really young and they were only giving out Universe God auras. The one leading them was a brown-haired young man who was Universe God in the 3rd heaven. We are reaching Purple Flame Realm soon. Be careful. Remember what Master said, the brown-haired young man urged. The other 3 people nodded faintly and there was a tinge of excitement in their eyes. The 4 of them were from Greenfire World. They were cultivators that came for training in the ancient battlefield. They were also from the same sect. Greenfire World then was different from before. There were many real gods and also universe gods. There were so many cultivators who wandered in the surrounding battlefield looking for opportunity. It was naturally much easier to find opportunities on the battlefield. For instance, on the skull where Greenfire World was located, there was more than half of the territory that Greenfire World had probed and found more Mystery Land. Purple Flame Realm was one of them. Purple Flame Realm has a total of 3 levels. The danger on the first level is enough to kill many universe gods. As for the second levels, it is simply courting death if a universe god enters. Even when our master enters the second level, he has to be cautious and not reckless. As for the third level of Purple Flame Realm, in the entire Greenfire World, only the legendary Wushuang City Master could go in. Anyone else, including our masters or even our master's master, will definitely die once they enter. The brown-haired young man looked at the other 3 universe gods. The 4 of us can only challenge the first level in Purple Flame Realm at most, and we have to be extremely careful. As for the second level, don't even think about it. Understand? Yes, Senior Qing Hao. The other 3 nodded simultaneously. The 4 of them were chatting casually, but they didn't know that their conversation was being eavesdropped on by Emperor God Xie, who was hidden in the dark. 4 universe gods from the same sect. In their conversation earlier, they brought up about Purple Flame Realm and also Greenfire World. Emperor God Xie had creased his eyebrows earlier. He had heard and he instantly knew that Purple Flame Realm would be a unique place in the surrounding battlefield. The 4 universe gods should be wandering in Purple Flame Realm. However, Greenfire World. Emperor God Xie didn't understand. Regardless, I'll know when I ask. Emperor God Xie smirked coldly and immediately walked forward. The 4 universe gods went in the direction where Purple Flame Realm was, under the brown-haired young man's lead. But suddenly, Emperor God Xie, who was malicious-looking, blocked their way. The 4 universe gods immediately stopped and 4 pairs of eyes fixed upon Emperor God Xie. This person. The brown-haired young man's eyes dilated in shock. Although Emperor God Xie before him didn't give out much aura, the brown-haired young man still felt extremely pressured. The pressure was much stronger than when he faced his own master. The brown-haired young man took a deep breath and immediately bowed. "Greetings, Senior, I am Junior Qing Hao." The brown-haired young man beckoned and bowed at Emperor God Xie. Immortal Palace was one of the top 9 major forces in Greenfire World. They were very famous. The brown-haired young man, Qing Hao, should be a big figure in Immortal Palace. Theoretically, as long as the other person was experienced in Greenfire World, they should have heard of his name. However, Emperor God Xie blinked and seemed confused. He had been in Eternal Chaotic World for so long, but he had never heard of a sect named Immortal Palace. "I have something I'd like to ask you." Emperor God Xie looked at the 4 of them in front of him. "Yes, Senior. The 4 of us will tell you everything we know." Qing Hao seemed rather calm. "I heard your conversation earlier and you talked about Greenfire World and also Immortal Palace that you brought up yourself. I wonder if you could tell me in detail?" Emperor God Xie smiled and asked. "Senior, you don't know about Greenfire World or Immortal Palace?" Qing Hao stared and suddenly put his guard up. The other 3 disciples from Immortal Palace looked terrified as well. If the other party didn't know about Immortal Palace, it might be understandable. After all, Immortal Palace was established after the drastic change in Greenfire World. It had only been less than 20,000 years. Those who cultivate in seclusion most of the time during the year, it was normal if they didn't know about them. However, he didn't even know about Greenfire World. Obviously, he wasn't an expert from Greenfire World. Master, I met a mysterious expert on the ancient battlefield. He is from outside Greenfire World." Qing Hao didn't move, but he sent a message to his master in secret. Chapter 1948. Emperor God Xie rejoiced with wild excitement. Qing Hao responded at the first instant. However, when he tried to send a message, what happened? "My message can't go through?" Qing Hao was shocked. Then, Emperor God Xie had already seen through Qing Hao's actions. He sneered, "Young man, don't even think about sending messages. It's useless. I have already sealed off this space-time. With just 4 universe gods, you can't possibly break it. Don't even think about running away either." Then, there was pressing stress soaring from Emperor Xiexin's body. Putong, 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 putong. The 4 disciples from Immortal Palace, including the brown-haired young man, Qing Hao, knelt down straight away. Their heads were buzzing and they couldn't come back to reality for quite some time. Finally, Qing Hao was the first one who recovered. He clenched his teeth as he glared at Emperor God Xie. He understood that the opponent was far beyond their match. Forget about themselves, even their masters or masters' masters weren't his match. In other words, it was true when the opponent said that the 4 of them couldn't escape. "The 4 of you, answer my questions. I may let you go." Emperor God Xie smiled maliciously. "Dream on." Qing Hao humphed coldly. He knew that the opponent was from outside Greenfire World and he had wicked ideas in his mind. He naturally wasn't willing to cooperate. "He, a person of integrity," Emperor God Xie scoffed and pointed casually with his fingertip. There was a light that burst out and instantly pierced the head of the favored one from Immortal Palace. Then, his aura vanished into thin air. "Brother Qing Hao." The other 3 next to him looked distressed. "As your senior has died, it's your turn now. Answer my questions honestly or die like your senior did. Make your own choice." Emperor God Xiexin's voice was cold. With his measure of an Emperor God expert, 3 universe gods who were inexperienced naturally couldn't withstand it. They immediately gave him all the answers that he wanted on a silver platter. Greenfire World is a big world. After finding out about Greenfire World, even Emperor God Xie was shocked. The ancient battlefield that he was in had never had any other cultivators but him alone wandering there. But then, he had realized that there was a big world in the ancient battlefield. And the big world seemed to be nurtured from the battlefield. A big world that was nurtured from the ancient battlefield, Just how terrifyingly valuable was the world? That's not right. Emperor God Xiexin shook his head. The spiritual influence of heaven and earth here in the ancient battlefield is so much more intense. The cultivation environment was much more outstanding than the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. On top of that, the ancient battlefield is a land of opportunities. Just how strong were the experts from Green Fire World? Emperor God Xiexin became alert at the first instant. With such outstanding cultivation environment, the overall power of a cultivator shouldn't be any weaker. Who is the strongest person in Green Fire World? How strong is he? Emperor God Xiexin asked straightforwardly. One of the disciples from Immortal Palace answered, the strongest person in Green Fire World is naturally the Wushuang City Master. He built Wushuang City himself and it is no doubt the #1 sanctuary. Countless experts fought to cultivate in Wushuang City. However, rules applied. Although Green Fire World has 9 top forces, none of the 9 top forces dare to go against Wushuang City Master's command. He is widely acknowledged as the strongest one. As for Wushuang City Master's power, no one knew. We only knew that our masters, or even our master's master, said that they aren't Wushuang Master's match. At which level are your master and your master's master at? Emperor God Xiexin continued to question them. Our master is a void real god. As for our master's master, the master of Immortal Palace, he was an eternal real god, the top eternal real god. The disciple from Immortal Palace answered honestly. Emperor God Xiexin heard the disciple from Immortal Palace's answer and he was surprised. The palace master of one of the 9 top forces is only an eternal real god. How could he be so weak? Emperor God Xiexin was confused, but then he finally understood after a round of questions. Haha, I see. It turned out that Green Fire World had only started evolving in the past 10,000 years. The cultivation environment here was terrible. They didn't even have any universe gods. Then, somehow or other, the spiritual influence of heaven and earth became more intense. On top of that, the expert from Green Fire World somehow received some cultivation guidance. Hence, the experts in Green Fire World slowly grew. No wonder. In such an outstanding cultivation environment, the palace master of one of the 9 forces is only an eternal real god. Emperor God Xiexin smiled and his smile looked malicious. There was boundless surprise in his eyes too. Great, that's great. Even heaven is helping me. Previously, I found the ancient battlefield that was totally sealed off from eternal chaotic world. Then, I found another big world that possesses great potential. An Emperor God Xiexin naturally could tell the value of Green Fire World. Although Green Fire World had yet to develop, it was like a newborn baby. It required time to slowly grow. Once it was fully grown, it was simply unimaginable how great of a level it would reach. Emperor God Xiexin found out about the situation of Green Fire World and instantly had many wicked ideas pop into his head. Conquer Green Fire World and make Green Fire World into his private backyard. Let's go. Let's head to Green Fire World. Emperor God Xiexin immediately forced the 3 disciples from Immortal Palace to lead the way to Green Fire World. In the beginning, he was worried about the standard of the experts in Green Fire World. But now, he didn't care much. Even Palace Master from the 9 strongest forces was merely eternal real god level. The so-called Supreme Wushuang City Master couldn't be that powerful. From Emperor God Xiexin's point of view, Wushuang City Master would at most be a chaotic real god. He reckoned that he shouldn't be the top among chaotic real gods as well. As for Almighty, Emperor God Xiexin didn't consider that at all. There weren't many Almighties from eternal chaotic world. It wasn't a level that one could easily achieve. Even if Wushuang City Master had already broken through and become an Almighty, he wouldn't care. One should know that he was an Emperor God. Plus, as he had wandered in the ancient battlefield for over 12,000 years, he was very powerful. Hence, he didn't bother much. Just a Green Fire World, he could overtake it easily alone. Very soon, Emperor God had reached the entrance of Green Fire World and Green Fire Palace under the lead of the disciples from Immortal Palace. Chapter 1949. Outsider in Wushuang City. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat alone with his eyes closed. He had been cultivating in seclusion for the past 12,000 years. He broke 7 stars previously and they was all recovered. His power had resumed its peak. Not only that, his comprehension of doctrine improved tremendously as well. Both spacetime doctrine and reincarnation doctrine had already reached the extreme limit of the 8th level in Doctrine Palace. In terms of sword principle, he had also had a breakthrough. The current me has improved tremendously in my overall power, but it is a pity that I will never step out to the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, Chaotic Supreme. Since he had received the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill, he had been studying it. He had been figuring out ways to break through. He had already put in painstaking effort, but he felt that he was just slightly away from breakthrough. The slight bit was just like a layer of window paper. With just one poke, it would break. However, the window paper required a great opportunity. Hence, Jian Wushuang tried to keep himself composed. Just then, Jian Wushuang was surprised and he opened his eyes. His figure moved and he left the secret room. In the lofty discussion hall in Wushuang City. Vroom. Jian Wushuang's body appeared on the highest throne out of nowhere. Father, brother Wang Yuan, 4th brother, what's the matter? Why are you in a hurry to see me? Jian Wushuang looked at the 3 of them next to him. He said before he had started cultivating in seclusion. Unless it was something very urgent, one shouldn't interrupt him when he cultivated. There's something urgent. Jian Nanshan's face grew grave. Let me break this to you, Wang Yuan said directly. 3rd brother, there's an outsider in Greenfire World. Outsider? Jian Wushuang immediately looked distressed. Greenfire World and the entire ancient battlefield was under the cover of the Great Formation. Without the permission of the higher-ups in Greenfire Palace, no one could barge in as they wished. In such a situation, there were outsiders in Greenfire World. Either he is an expert in a deep sleep in the ancient battlefield, or he is an expert from eternal chaotic world who came to the battlefield through the space gap in ancient mystery land by luck, just like King Jiyu Tong back then. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. How's the power of this outsider? Jian Wushuang asked. Very powerful. Terrifyingly powerful, Wang Yuan said solemnly. Greenfire World grew over the years and our power is way beyond what it was in the past. There are many cultivators who have already reached the level of a real god. However, the outsider just stood there and many of our real gods didn't even have the guts to fight back. If I am not mistaken, he should have reached the almighty level that you mentioned. Almighty? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. The outsider seems to have understood the history of Greenfire World. He came and attacked Greenfire Palace with thunderous measures. Greenfire Palace couldn't resist at all. We sent out the few Dao soldiers that you left behind. However, with the few Dao soldiers joining forces, he still defeated them with ease, Wang Yuan said. Oh! Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. The few Dao soldiers that he left in Greenfire Palace were merely ordinary bronze-armored Dao soldiers. Theoretically, the few Dao soldiers joining forces could easily match a Sir God evenly. In the end, they were defeated with ease. The enemy was at least a top Sir God or Emperor God. Do you have any mirror image of him fighting with the Dao soldiers? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, I ordered someone to record them. Suru stood up and took out a token. Suru waved and a huge mirror image immediately appeared in the void. In the mirror image, the outsider fought with the few Dao soldiers. A total of 4 Dao soldiers were fighting all out, but in the end, the malicious-looking young man only attacked casually and suppressed the 4 Dao soldiers easily. When Jian Wushuang saw the malicious-looking young man in the image, his eyes dilated in shock. It's him. Jian Wushuang recognized the malicious-looking young man. There were many experts in eternal chaotic world. There were many almighties among them. Any almighty who was famous, Jian Wushuang paid attention to them. The malicious-looking young man in the image was an emperor god. Jian Wushuang naturally knew him. Emperor God Xiexin, he came to Greenfire World. Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold. Emperor God Xiexin had been wandering in the ancient mystery land. As he appeared there, no doubt, He had definitely come through the space gap in ancient mystery land. Luckily, it was only an emperor god who barged in unintentionally, and he isn't that powerful. He is well within my power to deal with. If it was really an ancient experts, it'd be real trouble. Jen Wuxuang let out a breath of relief. Emperor God Xie Xin's power was ordinary, so Jen Wuxuang could deal with him. If it were to be an ancient expert who had woken up from the ancient battlefield, that would be true trouble. An ancient expert, even the weakest one, wouldn't be one that Jen Wuxuang could easily deal with once he resumed his peak fighting power. Third brother, you know this outsider? Wang Yuan asked. Never met him, but I know his background. So, what happened after? Jen Wuxuang asked again. The outsider's intention is obviously to conquer Green Fire World. Hence, after he defeated the feudal soldiers and revealed his power, he didn't massacre the higher-ups in Green Fire World, but he left a message. He said that he would give us 1 month's time to consider. 1 month later, if Green Fire World and the 9 top forces in Green Fire World do not yield to him, he will kill all of us one by one. Besides, he even brought up you, third brother. Wang Yuan looked at Jen Wuxuang. Oh, what did he say? Jen Wuxuang looked cold. He knows that third brother, Wuxuang City Master, is widely acknowledged as the strongest person, and your word carries great weight. Hence, he said to let you go and see him, Wang Yuan said. For me to see him? Hee. Emperor God Xie Xin has guts. Jen Wuxuang sneered, but he understood. I reckon Emperor God Xie Xin doesn't know my identity. Jen Wuxuang knew just how famous he was in eternal chaotic world. Even great emperor had scruples, let alone just Emperor God Xie Xin. However, Emperor God Xie Xin didn't care about him but had relayed a message for Wuxuang City Master to see him personally. He definitely didn't know Wuxuang City Master's true identity. Emperor God Xie Xin probably only knew that the strongest person in Green Fire World was Wuxuang City Master, but he didn't know the true name of the Wuxuang City Master. If Emperor God Xie Xin knew, forget about his mad behavior, he would have run away from Green Fire World long ago. Where's this outsider now? Jen Wuxuang asked. He's in the palace floating outside Green Fire Palace, Wang Yuan answered. Chapter 1950. Wuxuang City Master arrived very well. Jen Wuxuang nodded faintly while he put on a playful smile. Third brother, what are you going to do? Wang Yuan looked at him. What to do? Hee, as Emperor God Xie Xin wants me to go and see him, I shall grant his wish. Jen Wuxuang sneered, but his smile was as cold as a blade. On that very day, Jen Wuxuang departed from Wuxuang City and came before the palaces floating outside Green Fire Palace. In the palace, right in the middle of the palaces, the malicious-looking Emperor God Xie Xin was sitting on a grand throne casually while the cultivator from Green Fire World stood below in reverence. Most of the cultivators from Green Fire World had reached real god level. Then, there were a few real gods who were nodding and bowing with ingratiating smiles on their faces. Previously, when Emperor God Xie Xin had barged into Green Fire Palace, he had suppressed the entire Green Fire Palace alone and also the 9 top forces in Green Fire World. The news had spread like wildfire. Naturally, it caught the attention of the experts who were suppressed by Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces. They had approached him to seek his backing. Then, there were a bunch of people gathered under the command of Emperor God Xie Xin. Mr. Emperor God, according to the news that I've gotten, the higher-ups of the top 9 forces are gathered at Green Fire Palace. I reckon they are thinking of countermeasures. Besides, there were experts from Green Fire Palace who requested Wuxuang City Master to get involved, a purple-haired elder reported politely. Hee, Mr. Emperor God, you don't have to go through the trouble. You can totally wipe out Green Fire Palace directly, as well as the top 9 forces. Then, build another brand new force to unite Green Fire World. Wouldn't that be easier? Yeah. Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces, although they could agree to yield to you because of fear towards your, I reckon it would only be temporary. They are not trustworthy. The few of them started commenting. No matter if it was within an ordinary sect or force, there would be some traitors, let alone when they were in a big world. The few real gods at the scene were traitors of Green Fire World. They knew that Emperor God Xiexin was an outsider, but they revolted and went to his side without hesitation for their own benefit. Plus, they had been urging Emperor God Xiexin to wipe out Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces. Because the few of them most likely had been suppressed by Green Fire Palace and the 9 top forces once. On the highest throne, Emperor God Xiexin tapped the armrest with a malicious smile plastered across his face. I want a complete Green Fire world. Just like how the current structure with Green Fire Palace and 9 top forces are great. There's no need to wipe them out. What I want to do now is to replace Wushuang City Master so that the cultivators in Green Fire World take me as the strongest person, treat me as a god. That'll be enough. Of course, if they don't act wisely, they can't blame me. The few real gods were unhappy but didn't talk anymore. Then, a figure in a black robe walked in and bowed at Emperor God Xiexin. Mr. Emperor God, Wushuang City Master is here. Oh! Emperor God Xiexin raised his eyebrows. Wushuang City Master. The few real gods gasped a breath of cold air. They were born in Green Fire World. They knew the legends about Wushuang City Master. Wushuang City Master was totally a legend in Green Fire World. Any single person couldn't help but reveal reverence and worship when they bring up Wushuang City Master. Although the few real gods had already switched allegiance to Emperor God Xiexin, they were still fearful of the legendary Wushuang City Master from the bottom of their hearts. However, the moment they recalled Emperor God Xiexin's power, the few real gods felt reassured. Humph, at least Wushuang City Master is smart enough. Of course, no matter how high his position is in Green Fire World, he is just a real god after all. How could he be compared to an emperor god favorably? From what I can see, Wushuang City Master is definitely panicking. He must be afraid that Mr. Emperor God will kill him later. What Wushuang City Master? Has nothing before Mr. Emperor God. The few real gods continued to praise him. Emperor God Xiexin sneered, Wushuang City Master ain't that dumb, let him wait outside for a bit. Yes, the man in the black robe who came to send the message turned to leave. Outside the palaces, there were a few figures standing side by side. In Green Fire Palace that was not too far away, there were many higher-ups from Green Fire World who were paying attention. The higher-ups from the 9 top forces were standing there as they watched too. Most of them were anxious. Although Jian Wushuang had saved Green Fire World more than once and there was no doubt about his power, the cultivators in Green Fire World weren't like before. They could tell that Jian Wushuang was only a real god. However, the outsider Emperor God Xiexin was the legendary Almighty. It was said that the top of the pyramid in the outside world. Between real gods and almighties, the difference was ridiculously huge. Hence, although they were absolutely obliged to Jian Wushuang, they were still extremely worried. Mr. Emperor God tell you to wait here. The man in a black robe who had come to send the message was arrogant. He was unprecedentedly excited too because he knew that those standing before him were the expert higher-ups from Green Fire World and also the legendary Wushuang City Master. To block Wushuang City Master outside the door and make him wait, he had never thought about it before. He wants us to wait here? The B** starred. Wang Yuan immediately cursed with anger. No hurry. As he wants to put on airs, I will let him do it. I wonder how is he going to end this later? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly but didn't care much. Qiu Yu, who was next to Jian Wushuang, shook her head slightly. She started to pity Emperor God Xiexin, who didn't know how high the sky was. Jian Wushuang didn't wait for long. There was finally movement among the palaces. Emperor God Xiexin flew over with a few real gods surrounding him. Rumble. There was vast divine might spreading out from Emperor God Xiexin as he pressed the earth. He had yet to arrive but his voice reverberated through the universe. Among you, who is Wushuang City Master? Emperor God Xiexin's voice was cold with a tinge of a high and mighty aura. He put his hands behind his back as he stood in the void above. He surveyed everyone beneath him. He came before Jian Wushuang but he didn't bother to look at Jian Wushuang. He heard from the real god under his command that Wushuang City Master was only a real god. Just a real god wasn't worth him taking a look at. Chapter 1951. Misunderstanding rumble. The divine might of an emperor god pressed the scene so mightily. The experts from Green Fire World at the scene revealed an expression of terror and reverence. Before an emperor god, their strongest cultivator was only a real god. They didn't even have the guts to attack. The purple-haired elder next to Emperor God Xiexin was like a fox borrowing the awe of a tiger and roared, "Mr. Emperor God came personally. Why aren't you on your knees yet?" Knees. Jian Wushuang's gaze turned cold as he glanced at Emperor God Xiexin, who was high above. He lifted the corners of his lips into a unique curve. "You told me to come and see you personally. When I came, you made me wait for a while. Now, you want me to kneel before you? Hehe, Emperor God Xiexin, I really wonder who gave you the courage to do such things." Jian Wushuang's voice had a tinge of disdain as it resounded in the universe. Emperor God Xiexin, who stood arrogantly above with his hands behind him, was shocked. Since he had come to Green Fire World, although he put his power in display, he had never announced his name. For instance, the real gods who sought his patronage only referred to him as Emperor God, but no one knew his name. However, the person could call him by his name. "You are." Emperor God Xiexin looked down slightly. Only then, he finally looked at Jian Wushuang. It was the first time he had looked at Jian Wushuang after he had walked out of the palace. With one glance, he saw Jian Wushuang's appearance and felt the unique aura clearly. Emperor God Xiexin was stunned. Not only his gaze but his expression stiffened. Even his heart seemed to have stopped beating then. The entire space-time paused. Only Emperor God Xiexin was looking at Jian Wushuang in shock. After a while, vroom. Emperor God Xiexin quivered and he could feel as though his scalp had exploded. You are. Sword Emperor? Emperor God Xiexin stared at Jian Wushuang. His expression was as though he had seen a ghost. He really thought he had seen a ghost. A sword emperor who was famous for his bad name in eternal chaotic world. He, of course, could recognize him. Emperor God Xiexin was extremely fearful of Sword Emperor. If he were to come across Jian Wushuang in eternal chaotic world, he definitely would take another route without hesitation and didn't dare to offend him. But then, he saw Sword Emperor in Green Fire World. How is this possible? How could it be? How could Sword Emperor be here? Emperor God Xiexin was in disbelief. The ancient battlefield where Green Fire World was so secretive. After over 12,000 years of wandering, Emperor God Xiexin was sure that the ancient battlefield had almost never been wandered before. It was totally sealed off from eternal chaotic world. Hence, Green Fire World on the ancient battlefield was naturally sealed off from the world as well. He had never expected himself to come across any experts from eternal chaotic world there, let alone the infamous Sword Emperor. Before he had taken action against Green Fire World, he had found out about Green Fire World and he also knew Wushuang City Master. He also knew that Wushuang City Master was only a real god. The truth was as such, he was only a real god. However, he had never expected Wushuang City Master to be Jian Wushuang. Wushuang City Master? Jian Wushuang? Emperor God Xiexin felt bitter. Judging by the name itself, Wushuang City Master did carry the name Wushuang. However, there were so many people with the same name. Who would associate Wushuang City Master with Jian Wushuang? Emperor God Xiexin. Emperor God Xiexin was still astonished, terrorized, and in disbelief when Jian Wushuang spoke again. "You haven't replied to my question. I'd like to know who gave you such courage." Emperor God Xiexin was stunned and he had yet to reply. The purple-robed elder, who was like a fox borrowing the awe of a tiger, bellowed, "How dare you speak to Mr. Emperor God like that? Wushuang City Master, are you sick of living?" The moment he said that, Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. However, Emperor God Xiexin was covered in a cold sweat. He stole a glance at the purple-robed elder and he was still smiling in disdain. Hong! Emperor God Xiexin slapped. The purple-robed elder had yet to respond but bang, he had already become a cloud of bloody fog. The sight shocked the surrounding people, especially the few real gods who sought the patronage of Emperor God Xiexin. Before they managed to ask, they saw Emperor God Xiexin attacked again. Bang! 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 There were a few continuous bangs. The few real gods who sought patronage from Emperor God Xie turned into clouds of bloody fog and died. After that, Emperor God Xie then let out a breath of relief. Then, he looked at Jian Wushuang. On his malicious face, there was an awkward smile. Sword Emperor, this is a misunderstanding, a great misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, a great misunderstanding. It reverberated through the universe and all cultivators in Green Fire World were astonished. A misunderstanding? Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold. I don't think so, Emperor God Xie. You wanted me to see you and I came. You wanted me to wait for you and I waited. Now, should I listen to the person from earlier and bow to you? No, no. How dare I? Sword Emperor, this is a misunderstanding. Emperor God Xie shook his head and took out a Qian Kuan ring. Sword Emperor, I crossed the line this time. This Qian Kuan ring has all the resources that I have gathered all my life. Take this as an apology to you, Sword Emperor. I hope Sword Emperor doesn't record a demerit. I will leave immediately and never step foot in Green Fire World ever again. Leave now? Jian Wushuang said coldly, there's no hurry. As we have met, I happen to have things to ask you, Emperor God Xie. For example, how did you come to this battlefield? Besides you, who else knows about this battlefield? This is simple. I can answer you right now. Emperor God Xie smiled faintly and looked as though he was more than happy to answer Jian Wushuang's question. But in the next moment, run. Swoosh. Emperor God Xie turned into a shrill black flowing light as he plunged to the vast battlefield behind. Without hesitation and extremely decisively, he knew the surrounding battlefield clearly and also the value of Green Fire World. As he had found out about the battlefield and Green Fire World, according to Sword Emperor's bad name and his conduct, he absolutely wouldn't let him leave alive. Absolutely not. Hence, he had to run. The experts from Green Fire World were dumbfounded at the sight. Chapter 1952 Killing. The cultivators from Green Fire World previously thought that Wushuang City Master was only a real god and he couldn't match Emperor God Xie evenly. However, then, Jian Wushuang had yet to attack and he only stood there, but Emperor God Xie had already started running for his life without hesitation. That is Wushuang City Master, the legend of our Green Fire World. Many experts from Green Fire World clenched their fists as their eyes shimmered with adoration. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang's face changed the moment he saw Emperor God Xie started running away. At first, he had wanted to ask a few questions before he killed Emperor God Xie. He had never expected Emperor God Xie to be so determined to run away. Humph! Can you escape? Jian Wushuang's cold voice reverberated in the universe. The moment his voice resounded, a vast purple light soared up and instantly covered a range of few million miles. One realm pearl turned into a formation at one's will. *T. Emperor God Xie looked at the formation around him and his face grew grave. Not only that, he also realized that the moment the formation took shape, the surrounding spacetime would be sealed off. He couldn't even send a message to the outside world even if he wanted to. Sword Emperor, I have no intention to offend you. I can swear that I will never tell anyone else about this battlefield and Green Fire World. Let me go. Emperor God Xie roared. He regretted it. He regretted coming to Green Fire World. He had never expected to meet Sword Emperor there. Humph. So what if you swear? Secrets will only be safe with a dead person. Jian Wushuang was soaring with murderous intention. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. 4 resplendent golden lights suddenly soared up and instantly burst out. That is, looking at the 4 golden lights, Emperor God Xie's eyes dilated in shock. He also knew about Jian Wushuang. He knew that the scariest thing about Jian Wushuang was his 4 golden swords. The 4 golden swords possessed the power of a peak emperor god each. With 4, even Palace Master Wu Luo, who was a peak emperor god, would be suppressed. Go away. At such a crucial moment, Emperor God Xie took out a huge axe. The huge axe was billowing with imposing aura. It was a chaotic divine treasure. Emperor God Xie wielded the axe in his hand. Dang! 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 There were 4 continuous low thuds and Emperor God Xiexin suddenly retreated. However, the 4 Hongjun golden swords burst out in a different direction from the impact. Huh! Jian Wushuang was shocked. From what he knew, Emperor God Xiexin was only an ordinary emperor god and probably at the bottom of the tier. He didn't even have any skills that he was good at. Theoretically, such an emperor god should be killed by his Hongjun golden swords with one attack. However, he had blocked the 4 Hongjun golden swords and wasn't injured. It seems that I belittled you. Jian Wushuang's face was cold and Blood Mountain sword was suddenly drawn out from the scabbard. Under the sword intention, he took a stride forward and plunged out. Not good. Emperor God Xiexin quaked with terror. The rumors said that Sword Emperor not only had the 4 golden swords, his close body combat was terrifying too. If both collaborated flawlessly, he could easily kill a peak emperor god. I definitely can't fight him head-on. Emperor God Xiexin knew his limitations. He had wandered at the surrounding ancient battlefield for over 12,000 years. Because of the opportunities obtained, his power had increased tremendously. He could barely be considered to be one with fighting power of a peak emperor god. However, with such fighting power, he absolutely didn't stand a chance before the infamous Sword Emperor. Looking at Jian Wushuang approaching him, Emperor God Xiexin suddenly flicked his wrist and took out a bronze mirror that gave out mysterious aura. He gripped the bronze mirror tight as he concentrated his divine power. Vroom. Vroom. 2 boundless auras soared up from the bronze mirror. The 2 auras were as cold as if they were from Akron. In an instant, the 2 auras substantiated in the void and became 2 black shadows. The 2 shadows were like ordinary human cultivators, but they were greater in size. They were more than 3 meters tall. There wasn't real eyeballs in their eye sockets, only a ball of black flame, just like ghost fire. Hold him back. Emperor God Xiexin commanded, and the 2 black shadows suddenly charged at Jian Wushuang. The 2 cold yet fierce auras locked onto Jian Wushuang. What's that? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. He could feel that the 2 black shadows were fierce in fighting power. They had brought about pressure that wouldn't be weaker than an ordinary peak emperor god's. Plus, there were 2 shadows that joined forces which equaled to 2 peak emperor gods. Humph, you think you can stop me with these 2 shadows? Then, you can escape. Jian Wushuang humphed coldly. Jian Yi. Swoosh. A figure suddenly appeared in the void, became engulfed in the formation and instantly turned into flowing light. He moved to Emperor God Xiexin at a terrifyingly fast speed. Although Jian Wushuang didn't care about Emperor God Xiexin in the beginning, there were too many associated matters after all. In order to prevent the uncertainties, he let Jian Yi rush over. Just as he was held back by the 2 shadows, Jian Yi took action. D***MN. Emperor God Xiexin grew distressed, but he wasn't hopeless. Then, he had already reached the border of the formation that was transformed with 1 realm pearl. Jian Yi was slightly further away from him. He totally stood a chance to flee. He flicked his wrist again and took out a stone rod. The stone rod was only half a rod left. The stone rod was a unique treasure that he had found during the 12,000 years he had wandered around the surrounding battlefield. It was extremely useful. It was originally complete. However, he had come across danger previously and he had broken half of it. In a life-and-death situation, I can't think so much. Emperor God Xiexin's gaze was cold. As he gripped his palm tight. Bang! The remaining stone rod exploded. After it exploded, there was a billowing power that flooded. The strength of the power had yet to reach the level of a great emperor, but it was already extremely close to one. Plus, the power concentrated in one spot as it exploded. Hong! There was a loud bang on the purple formation that was made by 1 realm pearl. Then, in the place where the power swept out, there was a huge opening. I managed to escape. Emperor God Xiexin was filled with excitement. However, just as he smiled, he stiffened. Because he had realized that Jian Yi was right behind him. And, there was a scary palm which seized his throat. How could he be so fast? Emperor God Xiexin stared and his face was in terror. This is... Great Emperor? With astonishment, Emperor God Xiexin's head had already shattered into pieces. Chapter 1953 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror. Rumble. The moment Emperor God Xiexin died, the two black shadows that were holding Jian Wushuang back vanished into thin air and the universe resumed tranquility. Jian Wushuang moved and appeared next to Emperor God Xiexin. Looking at Emperor God Xiexin's dead body, Jian Wushuang looked solemn. Master, Jian Yi is useless. Jian Yi stood next to him in reverence. I can't blame you for this. I was too careless as I belittled Emperor God Xiexin, Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. At first, though Emperor God Xiexin was only an emperor god at the bottom of the tier and shouldn't be able to stir up any commotion in my hands, I thought I could ask him about how he got onto this battlefield in detail before I killed him. But I never expected that Emperor God Xiexin would be so decisive and start running for his life. Plus, his power has increased tremendously since before. From what Jian Wushuang knew, Emperor God Xiexin was only an ordinary emperor god and he didn't have any special skillsel. However, Emperor God Xiexin had put his power and skill on display and shocked Jian Wushuang. If I'm not mistaken, Emperor God Xiexin should have stayed on the battlefield for a long time and he has received many opportunities. Hence, his power has improved so tremendously and he has so many unique treasures. With the aid of the treasures, he nearly escaped. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. If Emperor God Xiexin were to flee successfully, they would be in big trouble. However, although Jian Yi had killed Emperor God Xiexin, he had broken an opening on the formation from one realm pearl earlier. Even though Jian Yi had killed him immediately, Emperor God Xiexin could totally have sent out a message in that short time frame. From the moment I saw Emperor God Xiexin, I sealed off the surrounding spacetime to make sure he couldn't send out any messages. But then, when he broke the formation of one realm pearl, the spacetime was sealed off too. I didn't know if he sent anyone any messages. If he did, we will be in big trouble, Jian Wushuang muttered. He was most worried that the ancient battlefield and green fire world were exposed. By then, it would attract not just one or two experts. Experts from all over eternal chaotic world would flood in. The reason why he had killed Emperor God Xiexin was to shut him up. The most troublesome thing was that he didn't know if Emperor Xiexin had told anyone else about the ancient battlefield when he had been wandering there. If he really did tell the others and there was someone who knew he had died, the person would most likely exposed anew to the public. By then, Emperor God Xiexin didn't seem to have a best friend with who could go through thick and thin together. And the ancient battlefield has such great opportunities, he shouldn't have told anyone but kept it all to himself, Jian Wushuang muttered. Of course, he was only guessing. He couldn't determine what exactly had gone on. Regardless of if there was a second person who knew of the ancient battlefield, I couldn't be bothered so much. It's best that I focus on improving myself. Jian Wushuang clenched his hand and he then looked at the Qian Kuan ring in Emperor God Xiexin's hand. Emperor God Xiexin had been wandering in the surrounding battlefield for so many years, he should have received many opportunities. Forget about the rest. Just the bronze mirror that he took out and the half-stone rod that he had broken were unusual. Jian Wushuang immediately started inspecting. After a while, when Jian Wushuang flipped his hand, there was a bronze mirror that gave out a strange aura appeared in his hand. The bronze mirror, Jian Wushuang could feel how extraordinary the bronze mirror was and he immediately started refining it. After a while, he found out the name and the function of the bronze mirror. 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror contains 5 godly spirits and is fed by divine power. It could explode with terrifying fighting power. Jian Wushuang's eyes were shimmering with joy. He knew that the 2 black shadows that popped out of the 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror were 2 godly spirits from the realm. In 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror, there were 5 godly spirits. The 5 godly spirits were the creator of the 5 Fire Godly Spirit Mirror. He removed the consciousness of 5 experts using thunderous measures, then refined the 5 expert spirits into the mirror. He fed the 5 godly spirits using divine power and woke them up when he was in a fight. As for the strength of the 5 godly spirits, it depended on the level of divine power fed. Remove experts' consciousness and refined their spirit into godly spirit. Such a cruel measure, Jian Wushuang complimented. He could tell that the refinery method of the five-fire godly spirit mirror was extremely cruel. The treasure could be considered a ruffian treasure. However, like the saying, in this world, there was not wicked treasure, only wicked treasure users. The more divine power it's fed and the purer it is, the stronger the fighting power of the godly spirits will be, Jian Wushuang muttered. He could feel that the 5 godly spirits in the 5-fire godly spirit mirror were starving. It was obvious that the 5 godly spirits' power had been drained long ago, as they had stayed in the ancient battlefield for so many years without divine power. It wouldn't be long until Emperor God Xiexin had obtained the 5-fire godly spirit mirror. Although he had been feeding them with divine power, he was an ordinary emperor god after all. Even after he fed them, he could merely wake 2 godly spirits up to fight. Plus, the fighting power of the 2 godly spirits could only reach the level of an ordinary peak emperor god according to his divine power strength. They weren't exactly strong. However, if the 5-fire godly spirit mirror were to be in Jian Wushuang's hand, that'd be entirely different. Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator. Although he had yet to step foot on the 7th step of inverse cultivation, his divine power strength was absolutely comparable to an emperor god's. In collaboration with the power of ancient tribe bloodline, he would be far beyond an ordinary emperor god. Plus, his divine power was far beyond an ordinary emperor god's, much vaster. If he were to feed the 5 godly spirits with his all, there's no hurry. "I'll try after I return to the secret room," Jian Wushuang muttered. Besides the 5-fire godly spirit mirror, Emperor God Xiexin had many treasures in his Qian Kuan ring. Most of them were chaotic divine treasure. As for the defense armor itself, there were a total of 3 pieces. Just like the one Emperor God Xiexin was wearing. It was also extremely powerful armor. No wonder when I attacked with 4 Hongjun golden swords earlier, he could withstand it so easily. It turns out that not only his power has reached the level of a peak emperor god, most importantly, he has a powerful defense armor. It seems that he has wandered in the surrounding ancient battlefield for many years, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. He briefly went through his treasure and Jian Wushuang was quite satisfied. It was a pity that there was no other useful treasure for Jian Wushuang besides the 5-fire godly spirit mirror. Chapter 1954 Sir God Shui Dao. Shuang third brother. Jian Nantian, Wang Yuan, Su Ru, and the others came next to Jian Wushuang. They looked at Emperor God Xiexin's dead body and everyone sighed. "He is an almighty," Wang Yuan couldn't help but compliment. "He's an almighty and he isn't weak. It's a pity that I killed countless Almigites when I was wandering in eternal chaotic world. Emperor God Xiexin is nothing," Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. He was telling the truth. Back then, during the war in Lineage of Star, he wiped out the entire Almighty's alliance with one stroke. He had literally killed more than 100 Almighties in one breath. Compared to that, Emperor God Xiexin was nothing. Emperor God Xiexin had died and the real gods who sought patronage from him were wiped out too. The forces in Green Fire World naturally cheered with excitement. At the same time, the reverence they held for their Wushuang City Master became stronger too. It turned out that although Wushuang City Master was only a real god, he could kill an almighty easily. After Jian Wushuang had killed Emperor God Xiexin, he returned to the secret room in Wushuang City. Before him, the ancient bronze mirror floated in the air in silence. The bronze mirror gave out a unique aura. 5 godly spirits. I wonder what kind of fighting power they could display under my divine power. There was anticipation in Jian Wushuang's eyes. He immediately churned his divine power along with the power of ancient tribe bloodline. Then, he poured them into the 5-fire godly spirit mirror. These divine powers and the power of ancient tribe bloodlines were absorbed by the 5 godly spirits in the bronze mirror. The 5 godly spirits became stronger after Jian Wushuang fed them with his divine power. Jian Wushuang went back to cultivation in seclusion, but he didn't know that when he killed Emperor God Xiexin, in a void within the surrounding ancient battlefield but far from Greenfire World. Vroom. A crimson flowing light that was originally flying at high speed suddenly stopped. The crimson light dispersed and revealed a young man with crimson hair in a crimson robe. Behind the young man was a crimson saber. His body was soaring with raging aura. His aura revealed that he had already reached the level of Sir God. One should know that, besides Jian Wushuang and his sword servant, Jian Yi, there was no other almighty in Greenfire World. The man with crimson hair in the crimson robe was obviously not someone from Greenfire World. Dead. Brother, Hez dead. The man with crimson hair stared as he stood there with anger. He was Sir God Xuedao. A Sir God expert who recently broke through and became Sir God, and had just came to prominence in Eternal Chaotic World. At the same time, he had another identity, which was Emperor God Xiexin's junior. Of course, there was almost no one who knew his identity in Eternal Chaotic World. Just like what Jian Wushuang knew, Emperor God Xiexin didn't have any friends that could go with him through thick and thin. Just like the battlefield with such major opportunities, could be known as a big treasure. Even if there were to be someone he was close to, he might not be willing to share. But he was extremely close to his one and only junior. He had only told one person about the location of the ancient battlefield, which was his junior, Sir God Xuedao. When Emperor God Xiexin came to wander in the ancient battlefield, Sir God Xuedao came to the battlefield under the lead of Emperor God Xiexin. However, they didn't take any action together, but they parted ways to look for their own opportunities. Previously, when Emperor God Xiexin had found out about Greenfire World, he had immediately sent a message to Sir God Xuedao for him to rush over. It was a pity that Emperor God Xiexin had been killed by Jian Wushuang before Sir God Xuedao had managed to get there. Before Emperor God Xiexin died, he had broken the spacetime seal that Jian Wushuang put up, and he sent a message to Sir God Xuedao. Sword Emperor is in Greenfire World. Greenfire World was Sword Emperor's old lair. Don't come here ever. After the message, Emperor God Xiexin's token didn't respond anymore. It was obvious that he had died. Sword Emperor? Sir God Xuedao's face grew in distress. Although he had just broken through and became a Sir God not too long ago, he had heard of Sword Emperor's bad name too. He was one of the experts on the top of the pyramid in Eternal Chaotic World, and he was widely recognized as the #1 genius. He was only a real god, but his fighting power was beyond a peak Emperor God. He could be known as terrifying. Sword Emperor is in this ancient battlefield. Greenfire World is his old lair. Sir God Xuedao looked horrified. At the same time, he was surprised. I know now. I have finally understood why Sword Emperor is so powerful and why he could improve so quickly. It turns out that he has been keeping these opportunities all to himself. He has been keeping this vast, ancient battlefield to himself. He possesses large resources that no one else in Eternal Chaotic World has. A person conquering such a vast ancient battlefield alone, taking all opportunities and treasures. If it were me, I reckon I wouldn't be much weaker than him. Sir God Xuedao roared as his gaze turned crimson. The crimson gaze not only showed that he was envious and jealous of Jian Wushuang, he also carried boundless hatred. Emperor God Xiexin and him were brothers in martial arts, and they were very close, ever closer than blood brothers. Emperor God Xiexin could be said to be his only relative in the world. Then, Emperor God Xiexin died. No doubt, he had definitely died in the hands of Sword Emperor. Revenge. Must take revenge. I have to take revenge on behalf of my brother, Sword Emperor. Sir God Xuedao's face became red. He wanted to take revenge for Emperor God Xiexin. However, he clearly knew about his difference in power with Sword Emperor. It would be impossible if he wanted to take revenge on his own. Even when he could receive opportunities in the ancient battlefield. Jian Wushuang was also improving. Plus, Jian Wushuang was only a real god then. No matter how he improved himself, it would be impossible if he wanted to catch up with Jian Wushuang. Hence, he could only rely on the others if he wanted to take revenge. Humph, you conquered such a vast, ancient battlefield and enormous resources alone. Aren't you a little too greedy? Sir God Xuedao looked cold as he thought to himself. Before long, he had made up his mind. That day itself, Sir God Xuedao returned on the original route where he came from. From ancient Mystery Land to the surrounding battlefield in Green Fireland, It was connected via a space gap. One could reach the battlefield through the space gap in ancient Mystery Land. Similarly, the battlefield could reach the ancient Mystery Land through the space gap. Sir God Shui Dao remembered the location of the space gap very clearly. Through the space gap, he returned to eternal chaotic world very quickly. Chapter 1955 Spread. In the dark void, Sir God Shui Dao's figure towered. His appearance was vague. There were dozens of people standing before him in reverence. Most of the people were real gods. There were some universe gods as well. They were taken by Sir God Shui Dao before them. At that moment, dozens of people were shivering in fear. They didn't know who the person was before them and why he had caught them, but they knew that the person before them was a true almighty. I brought you here for you to do something for me. Sir God Shui Dao overlooked the dozens of people before him. He immediately took out a bunch of tokens. The tokens here, all of you take one each. Then, head to Vientiane Tower, Abysmal Palace, Soaring Heaven King Palace, XXX, Century Phoenix Tower, Skyblade Group. Sir God Shui Dao listed the names of the forces. Some of the forces were major sects and some were intelligence assassin groups. Just like Vientiane Tower, they were widely acknowledged as the number ones in eternal chaotic world. Abysmal Palace and Soaring Heaven King Palace were the number one major force. Sir God Shui Dao then read out a dozen forces' names. After you get to the sects and forces, pass them the tokens. Don't speak a word after that. Sir God Shui Dao's voice was cold. Then, he took out a bunch of Qian Kuan rings. In these Qian Kuan rings, there are 1,000 doctrine gems each. They are your rewards. Besides, I have already left a special mark on each of your bodies. It'll be fine if you are to complete the task as I have instructed. Whoever doesn't send the tokens to the sects or forces within 100 years, I will take action directly and kill you. Understand? Sir God Shui Dao looked at the people around him with a cold gaze. Don't worry, sir. We will definitely send these tokens within 100 years. There was a real god that answered. The others nodded their heads simultaneously. They never doubted the ability of the Almighty before them. He could kill them at any time, so they naturally didn't dare to go against him. On top of that, the reward that the Almighty offer could make them go crazy. Go ahead, Sir God Shui Dao said. Then, the people immediately moved to their assigned sects and forces. In the void, there was only Sir God Shui Dao left. He slowly revealed his face and he looked extremely ferocious. Sword Emperor, humph. You can totally kill my brother alone. But now, all experts from Eternal Chaotic World are going to find out about the ancient battlefield. I'd like to see if you are capable enough to kill all experts from Eternal Chaotic World. In no time, the top forces in Eternal Chaotic World and the major sects were going to receive a token. The token contained information and also a mirror image. In the mirror image, there wasn't any fierce fight nor any cultivators, only a battlefield. An ancient yet vast battlefield. The mirror image showed a small region of the ancient battlefield. The top experts from Eternal Chaotic World could easily recognize from the small region that it was an ancient battlefield. Plus, it was one that everyone was unfamiliar with. It was even different to the ancient battlefield in ancient Mystery Land. There was no doubt that it was an entirely new ancient battlefield that no one had discovered. As for the information given, it was rather simple. It was the location of the hidden space gap in ancient Mystery Land. After the tokens reached the hands of the forces and sects, the experts were instantly astonished. It instantly stirred up an unprecedentedly great commotion in the entire Eternal Chaotic World. Such commotion was much greater than when ancient Mystery Land had never closed. One should know that it was a brand new ancient battlefield. One should know that there were many experts in ancient times and it was a period of great prosperity. After ancient times, the cultivators in the universe continued to grow weaker in power and they had never reached brilliance in ancient times. Naturally, the ancient battlefield had become a place which all cultivators continuously explored. Ever since the Second Era, there were two well-known ancient battlefields, the First Lair and Ancient Mystery Land. The two ancient battlefields had contained great opportunity. However, the first one was too dangerous while the second one was almost out of opportunities after so many years of exploration. Hence, although the two ancient battlefields were still attractive to many experts in eternal chaotic world, it wasn't too strong of an attraction. However, a brand new ancient battlefield would be entirely different. A brand new ancient battlefield contained complete opportunities. Enthusiastic. Madness. The Almighties on top of the pyramid in eternal chaotic world went crazy. Although Almighties were already high and above and there weren't many things in the universe that could catch their attention. However, a brand new ancient battlefield that no one had ever found and contained boundless opportunities, it was enough to make the Almighties go crazy. Forget about the ordinary Almighties, even those great emperors on the top wouldn't be able to stay composed after they found out about the news. On Thunderbolt Island, on Sanctuary Mountain. The two great emperors who had stayed on Thunderbolt Island all this while as they took care of all affairs in Sanctuary Alliance, Ancestor Tien Chen and East Royal Emperor, they met up. The two of their faces looked extremely solemn. Who spread the news exactly? Is it verified? Ancestor Tien Chen asked in a deep voice. At the moment, we don't know who spread it. The tokens were sent to various forces and sect by some real gods and universe gods. They only know that it was an Almighty that instructed them to do so, but they didn't know who the Almighty was. As for the validity of the mirror image and the information contained in the token, it has yet to be verified, East Royal Emperor said. Tokens sent to various forces and sects. It is obviously spread with intention and he purposely hid his identity. Could it be a trap set up by Holocaust sect or Akron Palace? Ancestor Tien Chen creased his eyebrows and made a guess. Shouldn't be. Although the news has yet to be verified, judging from the mirror image, it should really be an ancient battlefield and it was only partial of the ancient battlefield. The battlefield should be rather huge. With such a huge ancient battlefield unearthed, Holocaust sect and Akron Palace could definitely conquer it in secret if they were to find it. Why would they spread the news to us? East Royal Emperor said. Besides, even if the two dark forces wanted to scheme against us in Sanctuary Alliance, they would only have the guts to scheme against a few of our experts. They wouldn't stand a chance to scheme against the entire Sanctuary Alliance or the entire eternal chaotic world. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.